My son-in-law invited everyone on a family vacation except me. He looked me right in the eye and said, "We only have enough money for tickets for us and my parents." My daughter added, "And we need a break from you, Dad." I just smiled and said, "Okay, enjoy your vacation." When they checked into the luxury hotel in Hawaii, I was already there, but not as a guest, but as the owner. I am Bernard Stone, 68 years old, and for the last 5 years, I have let my family believe I am a broke retiree living on Social Security. But the truth is about to come out, and it is going to hurt. Before I tell you how I destroyed their vacation and their egos, please like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by your own family. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. The air in the small dining room of Jason and Emily's rented apartment was thick enough to choke on. I sat at the far end of the table nursing a glass of tap water, while Jason, my son-in-law, stood up and tapped his fork against his wine glass, demanding attention. He was 32 years old and wore a suit that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, a suit I knew for a fact was paid for by the company credit card of a startup I secretly funded. "All right, everyone, listen up," Jason announced, his face flushed with excitement and cheap wine. "I have huge news. To celebrate the success of my company's latest funding round, I have booked us all a 10-day getaway." He paused for dramatic effect, looking at his parents Linda and Paul, who were sitting across from me. Linda clasped her hands together, her diamond rings clicking. "We are going to Hawaii," Jason shouted. "The Azure Pearl Resort. 5 stars, all-inclusive." My daughter Emily squealed and clapped her hands. "Oh, honey, that is amazing. I have been dying to go there." Linda turned to Paul, beaming. "Did you hear that, Paul? The Azure Pearl. I saw that on a travel show. It is exclusively for the elite." I sat there silently watching them celebrate. A small part of me, a very naive part, thought that maybe, just maybe, this was a family trip, a chance to reconnect. I cleared my throat. "That sounds wonderful, Jason," I said, keeping my voice steady. "When are the flights? I need to check if my passport is valid and pack my bags." The room went silent. The laughter died instantly. Jason looked at Emily, then at his parents, and finally he looked at me with a smirk that made my blood run cold. "Oh, Bernie, I think you misunderstood," Jason said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Misunderstood what I asked." "The trip," Jason said slowly, as if explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "It is expensive, Bernie. Extremely expensive. The funding bonus was generous, but it wasn't infinite. We booked business class tickets for me, Emily, Mom, and Dad." He gestured to Linda and Paul. "And frankly, the budget is maxed out. There is no ticket for you." I felt a sharp sting in my chest, but I did not flinch. I looked at my daughter, expecting her to say something to defend me. Emily avoided my eyes, focusing intently on the tablecloth. "Emily," I asked softly, "is this true?" She finally looked up, but her eyes were cold. "Dad, honestly, it is not just about the money. We need a break." "A break," I repeated. "Yes, a break," she said, her voice gaining strength. "You are always around, Dad. You are in your little apartment just 10 minutes away. We feel like we have to entertain you. This trip is for us to relax, to be with people who operate at our speed." Linda let out a short, cruel laugh. "Oh, come on, Emily, be honest. Your father would be miserable there anyway. The Azure Pearl has a dress code, Bernie. Do you even own a suit that wasn't made in the 1980s? You would stick out like a sore thumb among the high society guests." Paul chuckled, stuffing a piece of roast beef into his mouth. "She is right, Bernie. You are a simple man. You would probably complain about the price of the cocktails. Stay here. Save your pension." The disrespect was palpable. It was physical. These were people who were eating food I paid for, indirectly driving cars leased with money from the salary I ensured Jason received. Jason sat back down, looking satisfied. "Look, Bernie, it is for the best. Besides, we need a favor. Since you are staying behind anyway, can you watch Buster?" Buster was their bulldog, a chaotic animal that required walking 4 times a day and had a biting problem. So I am not good enough to go to Hawaii, but I am good enough to be the dog sitter, I asked, my voice flat. Someone has to do it, Emily said, shrugging. And kennels are expensive, Dad. Since you are not contributing financially to the family, the least you can do is help out with the chores. Consider it your contribution to our happiness. Contribution. I wanted to laugh. My contribution was the $200,000 angel investment that launched Jason's company. My contribution was the down payment on this apartment, which I funneled through a shell company so they would think it was a grant. My contribution was keeping them afloat for 3 years while Jason played CEO. But they did not know that. To them, I was just Bernie, the retired widower who shopped with coupons. I looked around the table. I saw Linda's arrogance, Paul's gluttony, Jason's unearned pride, and my daughter's weakness. And in that moment, the last thread of obligation I felt toward them snapped. It broke cleanly and silently. I took a deep breath and put on the mask I had worn in boardrooms for 40 years. The mask of the calm, unshakable leader. Okay, I said, standing up. Okay, Jason asked, surprised by my lack of a fight. You want a break? I will give you a break. Go to Hawaii. Enjoy the Azure Pearl. I hear the penthouse view is spectacular. I won't be watching the dog, though, I added. You can hire a sitter with all that money you are saving on my ticket. Emily frowned. Dad, do not be petty. We don't have time to find a sitter. We leave tomorrow. That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem, I said, walking toward the door. Jason stood up, his face turning red. You are being selfish, Bernie. After everything we do for you, we invite you to dinner, and this is how you repay us. I opened the door and looked back at them one last time. Thank you for the dinner, Jason. It was very revealing. Have a safe flight. I walked out into the cool night air. Behind me, I heard Jason shout, Don't forget to water the plants while we are gone, old man. I walked to the elevator, my steps echoing in the empty hallway. My heart was pounding not from sadness, but from adrenaline. They wanted to play games. They wanted to judge people by their bank accounts. Fine. I could play that game better than anyone. I pulled my old battered phone from my pocket. It looked like a piece of junk, but it was encrypted with military-grade security. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 6 months. It rang once. Mr. Stone, a crisp, professional voice answered. We didn't expect to hear from you so soon. Hello, Henderson, I said. My voice dropping an octave, losing the waver of the old retiree. Prepare the jet. I am going to Hawaii. There was a brief pause on the other end. Of course, sir. When do you wish to depart? Tomorrow morning, I said, pressing the elevator button. And Henderson, activate Protocol 4 on the Stone Horizon investment portfolio. Specifically the tranche allocated to Jason Miller's startup. I want a full audit. Understood, sir. And regarding the resort, I smiled a cold, hard smile that reflected in the steel doors of the elevator. Call Gabriella at the Azure Pearl. Tell her the chairman is coming. And tell her I want the presidential penthouse prepared. I am going to have some guests. Guests, sir. Yes, I replied, stepping into the elevator. A very special group of VIPs. They think they are going on a vacation, but they are walking into a masterclass on humility. The doors closed, shutting out the noise from the apartment down the hall. I was done being Bernie the Burden. It was time to remind them who Bernard Stone really was. They wanted a vacation without me. I was going to give them a vacation they would never forget. While Jason and Emily were busy constructing their digital fantasy at the crowded commercial terminal, I sat in the back of my car watching their live stream, with a mix of amusement and pity. Jason held his phone high, angling the camera to capture the entrance of the first-class lounge in the background, even though they were clearly camped out on the sticky plastic chairs of the general boarding area. Hey guys, Jason shouted into his phone, his voice echoing with that fake influencer enthusiasm that always made my teeth ache. We are just waiting for our flight to Hawaii. Big things happening. Hard work pays off. He winked at the camera, pulling Emily into the frame. She forced a bright smile, adjusting her oversized sunglasses indoors, as if the fluorescent lights were the tropical sun. That is right, baby, she chirped. We needed this escape so badly. Dealing with negative energy at home has been exhausting. She rolled her eyes, a gesture clearly meant for her followers, but it landed squarely on me. I zoomed in on the image. Behind them, a tired mother was feeding her toddler fast food out of a greasy paper bag, and the floor was littered with discarded boarding passes. They were not in the VIP lounge. They were at Gate 42, the one notorious for delays and budget carriers. Jason continued his performance. We booked the Azure Pearl. Only the best for my parents and my queen. Stay tuned for the room tour. It is going to be epic. The comments rolled in praising him, calling him a self-made man. Self-made. I almost laughed out loud. The only thing Jason had ever made himself was a mess. They looked so smug, so confident in their little bubble of lies. They had no idea that the man they had just discarded the old burden they had left behind to watch the dog was currently watching them from a vantage point they could not even comprehend. I stepped out of the black sedan onto the tarmac of the private airfield, where the air smelled of jet fuel and silence. No screaming babies, no announcements about delayed flights. Just the sleek silver silhouette of my Gulfstream G650 gleaming under the morning sun. A man in a sharp navy suit was waiting by the stairs. Henderson, my personal attorney, and the only man who knew where all the financial skeletons were buried. Good morning, Mr. Stone, Henderson said, extending a hand, his grip firm and his eyes clear. The flight crew is ready. We have clearance for immediate takeoff to Honolulu. I shook his hand. Thank you, Henderson. Did you bring the documents? He nodded and pulled a leather portfolio from his briefcase, opening it on the hood of the car. Here is the breakdown of the Blue Sky Venture Capital portfolio, specifically the tranche allocated to Jason Miller's tech startup. I looked at the numbers. They were pathetic. Jason had burned through 80% of the initial seed money on marketing dinners and leasing a luxury office space. Product development was non-existent. He thinks Blue Sky is a consortium of anonymous investors, I said, running my finger down the ledger. He thinks he charmed them with his pitch deck. Henderson allowed himself a rare, dry smile. He has no idea that Blue Sky is a wholly owned subsidiary of Stone Horizon. You are the board, the investors, and the bank, sir. You have been keeping him alive. I picked up the pen. It is time to pull the life support. I signed the bottom of the page with a flourish. Initiate the audit. Freeze the corporate accounts. I want every penny accounted for. If he bought so much as a pack of gum with company money, I want to know. Henderson closed the folder. Consider it done. By the time he lands, his corporate cards will be nothing more than plastic scrapers. And the Azure Pearl, I asked. Gabriella is expecting you, Henderson replied. She has cleared the entire top floor. The staff has been briefed. They know to treat the Miller party with extreme adherence to standard protocol. I smiled. Standard protocol. For a man like Jason, who expected the world to bow to him, being treated like a regular person would be torture enough. But I had more than just standard protocol in mind. I walked up the stairs of the jet, the engines whining to life with a low, powerful hum. The flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, who had been with my crew for years, greeted me with a glass of vintage champagne. Welcome back, Mr. Stone, she said. It has been too long. I took the glass and settled into the leather recliner. It had been too long. I had spent the last 5 years playing the role of the retired widower, shrinking myself to fit into the small box my daughter and son-in-law had built for me. I had bitten my tongue when they mocked my clothes. I had opened my wallet when they cried poverty. I had hoped that my patience would be rewarded with love, that if I gave them enough, They would eventually see me. But they did not see me. They only saw what they could take. As the jet accelerated down the runway, pushing me back into the soft leather, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The sad, lonely Bernie who waited by the phone was gone. The man soaring into the clouds was Bernard Stone, and he was done waiting. I looked out the window as the ground fell away beneath us, shrinking the city, the airport, and Jason's lies into insignificance. They wanted a vacation. They wanted a break from reality. Well, I was going to give them a reality check that would bounce harder than Jason's credit cards. I took a sip of the champagne. It tasted cold, crisp, and expensive. It tasted like justice. The Azure Pearl is a masterpiece of architecture, a sprawling sanctuary of white marble and volcanic stone rising from the pristine sands of the Hawaiian coast, like a modern temple to excess. The air is perfumed with plumeria and sea salt, and the only sounds are the gentle lapping of the waves and the hushed, respectful tones of the staff. It is a place designed to make you forget that the outside world exists, a place where billionaires come to escape their empires. From the balcony of the presidential penthouse, I watched the main driveway with a glass of iced tea in my hand, waiting for the show to begin. It did not take long. While the other guests arrived in sleek black limousines or private hotel cars, Jason and his entourage spilled out of a battered airport shuttle bus, the kind that stops at every single budget motel along the highway before reaching the resort. They looked like a disaster. The contrast between the pristine elegance of the lobby and my family was almost painful to witness. Jason's suit, the one he was so proud of, was wrinkled and stained with sweat from the long, humid journey. Emily looked exhausted, her hair frizzy from the humidity, dragging a suitcase that looked too heavy for her. Linda and Paul were fanning themselves with travel brochures, their faces red and shiny, complaining loudly about the heat, the traffic, and the lack of immediate service. They had spent 10 hours in the cramped seats of economy class, a far cry from the business class luxury Jason had lied about, and the fatigue had stripped away their pretenses. They looked exactly like what they were: imposters crashing a party they could not afford. As they dragged their luggage up the grand staircase toward the reception, leaving a trail of sand and exhaustion on the polished marble, I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. They had wanted a vacation without me. Well, they had arrived, and I was ready to ensure their stay was memorable for all the wrong reasons. Jason marched up to the front desk with that unearned swagger I had come to loathe, pushing past a quiet elderly couple who were waiting patiently. He slammed his hand on the marble counter, his voice booming through the serene lobby. "I am Jason Miller," he announced loud enough for people 3 rows back to hear. "I have a reservation. VIP, give us the best ocean view suites you have and bring some champagne for my mother immediately." The receptionist, a young man named Kai, who I had personally briefed earlier that morning, did not flinch. He typed slowly on his keyboard, his face a mask of polite indifference. "Welcome to the Azure Pearl, Mr. Miller. I see your reservation here. 3 standard rooms." Jason frowned. "Standard? No, I booked deluxe suites. Check again. I am a CEO." Kai did not look up. "Standard rooms, sir. Non-refundable booking. Now for the incidental deposit and the resort fees, I will need a credit card. The total hold will be $5,000. Jason laughed, a nervous, arrogant sound. $5,000. That is steep, but fine. Quality costs money, right?" He pulled out his platinum corporate card, the one connected to the Blue Sky account I had frozen only hours before, and tossed it onto the counter with a flourish. "Put it on this. Keep the tab open. We are going to celebrate." Kai swiped the card. The machine beeped a harsh, dissonant sound that echoed in the silence. He swiped it again. Another beep. He looked at Jason with eyes devoid of sympathy. "I am sorry, sir. This card has been declined." The silence that followed was heavy. Jason's face went from red to a sickly shade of pale. Declined. That is impossible. Run it again. It is a corporate account. There is a limit of 50,000 on that card. Kai ran it a third time just to make a point. Declined, sir. Do you have another form of payment? Linda stepped forward, her fan whirring aggressively. Jason, what is going on? You said this was all taken care of. You said you were treating us. Jason was sweating profusely now, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. It is just a bank error, Mom. Probably a fraud alert because we are in Hawaii. He pulled out a second card, a personal one. Try this one. Beep. Declined. A third card. Beep. Declined. By now, a line was forming behind them. People were staring. The whispers started. Emily grabbed Jason's arm, her voice a hiss of panic. Jason, fix this. People are looking. You said you had the money. I do have the money, Jason snapped, his voice cracking. It is the banks. They are screwing me. Paul groaned loudly. Great. We fly 10 hours to get humiliated in a lobby. Is this your idea of high society, Jason? I knew you were exaggerating about your bonus. Jason was frantic now. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he scrolled through his contacts. I just need to make a call. Hang on. He walked a few steps away, but in the cavernous acoustics of the lobby, we could all hear him. Hey, Mike. Yeah, long time, man. Look, I am in a bit of a bind. My cards are frozen. Yeah, bank error. Can you Venmo me $2,000? I will pay you back double next week. Silence. Then. Hello? Mike. He hung up and dialed again. Steve, buddy. It is Jason. Listen, I have a huge opportunity, but I need some liquid cash right now. Just a bridge loan. 500. No. Okay. Bye. It was pathetic. The great CEO, the man who mocked my clothes and my life, was standing in a floral shirt begging his college buddies for cash while his wife and parents watched in horror. Finally, after being rejected by 3 different people, he came back to the desk, defeated. He pulled out a debit card, the one connected to their joint checking account, the money they needed for rent and bills. Try this one, he whispered. The machine beeped. Approved. But I saw the look on his face. He had just drained their life savings for a deposit on a hotel room he couldn't enjoy. Kai handed him the room keys with 2 fingers as if they were contaminated. You are all set, Mr. Miller. You have been assigned to the Mackay wing. Block C. It is a bit of a walk, so I suggest you get started. The bellhops are currently busy with our priority guests, so you will have to take your own bags. Have a magical stay. Jason grabbed the keys, his head low, not daring to look at his parents or his wife. He grabbed the heaviest suitcase and started walking toward the exit that led away from the beach and toward the service road. Block C was the resort's dirty little secret. While the main towers gleamed in the sun, Block C was a converted staff dormitory located on the far edge of the property, nestled romantically between the industrial laundry facility and the main parking garage. As Jason, Emily, Linda, and Paul dragged their luggage across the hot asphalt, the wheels clattering loudly, the illusion of their luxury vacation evaporated completely. The heat was oppressive here, away from the ocean breeze, and the air smelled faintly of diesel fumes and frying oil. Emily stopped to wipe sweat from her eyes, her mascara running down her cheeks. She looked up toward the main hotel tower, gazing longingly at the top floor, where the presidential penthouse dominated the skyline. Its sprawling terrace was shaded by white canopies and lush greenery, a paradise in the sky. For a fleeting second, she froze. I was standing on the edge of the balcony, looking down at them through my binoculars. I was wearing a white linen robe, the wind catching the fabric, holding a glass of wine. Our eyes met across the distance. She squinted, shielding her eyes from the sun. Her mouth opened slightly. She grabbed Jason's arm. Jason, look. Up there. On the balcony. That looks like Dad. Jason didn't even look up. He just kept dragging the suitcase, his mood foul. Don't be stupid, Emily. Your dad is back in his roach motel of an apartment watching the dog and eating canned soup. That is probably some billionaire or a movie star. Stop hallucinating and help me with these bags." Emily looked back up, but I had already stepped back into the shadows of the suite. She shook her head, wiping her face again. "Yeah, you are right. Dad could never afford to be in a place like this. He is just a burden." She turned away and followed her husband into the dark, narrow hallway of Block C, where the air conditioning was broken, and the only view was a brick wall. I lowered the binoculars and took a sip of my wine. They were right about one thing. The view from the top was indeed spectacular, especially when you were watching the people who betrayed you hit rock bottom. The next morning, the sun rose over the Pacific like a disk of molten gold, promising a day of paradise for the guests of the Azure Pearl. But for the Miller family, it brought only the harsh reality of their exile. From my vantage point on a private cabana deck in the Platinum Cove, the resort's exclusive members-only sanctuary, I watched them approach. The Platinum Cove was separated from the general populace by a wall of volcanic rock and lush birds of paradise flowers, guarded by a heavy iron gate that required a special black keycard for entry. On the other side of that gate was the main pool, a chaotic soup of screaming children, lukewarm water, and fighting for plastic lounge chairs. On my side, there was silence, misting fans, and waiters who knew your drink order before you asked. Jason led the pack wearing swim trunks that still had the price tag dangling from the back, and walking with that forced chest-out strut of a man trying to convince the world he belonged. Emily trailed behind him, looking miserable in a sun hat, while Linda and Paul complained loudly about the distance they had walked from Block C. They marched straight past the sign that said members only and up to the security kiosk. Jason pulled out his room key, the white plastic card given to budget guests, and tapped it confidently against the sensor. The machine let out a low, angry buzz, and the red light flashed. Jason frowned and tapped it again, harder this time, as if the force of his wrist could override the digital security. Buzz. Red light. A security officer, a large Polynesian man named Teo, who I had spoken with earlier, stepped forward, blocking the path. "Sir, this area is restricted," Teo said, his voice calm but immovable. "Access is limited to Platinum members and penthouse guests only. The main pool is located 200 yards back toward the lobby." Jason let out a scoff that was loud enough to carry over the sound of the waterfall. "Restricted. Do you know who I am? I am Jason Miller. I have a suite here. Open the gate. My parents are elderly and they need the shade." Teo did not blink. "I show you are registered in Block C, sir. That zone does not have privileges for the Cove. Please step back. You are blocking the entrance for other guests." The humiliation was painting Jason's face a deep shade of crimson. People were watching. A couple in silk robes waited behind him, looking annoyed. Linda fanned herself aggressively. "Jason, do something. You said we had full access. This is embarrassing." Jason slammed his hand against the gate, rattling the iron. "This is a mistake. My funding just came through. Open this gate or I will have your job. I will buy this hotel and fire you myself." It was the kind of empty threat that impotent men make when they feel their power slipping away. I decided it was time to make my presence known. I was lying on a teak daybed shaded by a white linen canopy. A waiter had just placed a platter of chilled lobster tails and a bottle of sparkling water on the table beside me. 2 spa therapists were kneeling at the foot of the bed, applying a cooling aloe vera gel to my legs. It was the picture of decadent excess, the exact opposite of the sweaty, desperate figure Jason cut at the gate. I sat up slowly and lowered my sunglasses. The movement caught Emily's eye first. She froze her hand, gripping the iron bars of the gate, her jaw dropping as she stared through the gaps in the foliage. "Dad," she whispered, her voice carrying across the quiet water. Jason spun around, following her gaze. When he saw me, his eyes bulged. For a moment, he looked like he had seen a ghost. Then the shock was replaced by a blind, irrational fury. He saw the lobster. He saw the therapists. He saw the peace he so desperately wanted and could not afford. "What the hell?" Jason screamed, his voice cracking. "Bernie, what are you doing in there?" I took a sip of my water, enjoying the condensation on the glass. "Hello, Jason. Hello, Emily. I see you made it to the pool. It looks a bit crowded over there." Jason grabbed the bars of the gate, shaking them violently. "How did you get in there? You are broke. You live on Social Security. You cannot afford this." He turned to his mother, his face twisting into a mask of realization. "Mom, he stole it. He stole the money." Linda gasped, clutching her pearls. "What money, Jason?" "Mom's money," Jason yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "The life insurance. The retirement fund. He told us it was all gone when she died. He told us there was nothing left to inherit. But look at him. He has been hoarding it. He has been living like a king while we struggle to pay rent." The accusation was so absurd, it was almost funny. My late wife, Catherine, had died 10 years ago, and every penny of her modest life insurance policy had gone to paying for Emily's college tuition, a fact they conveniently forgot. But facts did not matter to Jason right now. He needed a villain to explain his own failures. "You thief!" Jason screamed, trying to climb the gate, his foot slipping on the smooth metal. "That is my money. That belongs to Emily. You are spending our inheritance on lobster and massages, you selfish old man. Open this gate. I am making a citizen's arrest." Teo moved instantly. He grabbed Jason by the back of his floral shirt and hauled him off the gate like a misbehaving child. "Sir, that is enough. You are trespassing and disturbing the peace. You need to leave immediately, or I will call the police." "Let me go." Jason struggled, flailing his arms. "He is a criminal. He is spending my money." "Mom, look at him. He is laughing at us." I was not laughing. I was watching with cold detachment. But he was right about one thing. I was spending money, just not his. Paul stepped forward, trying to look imposing, but just looking sweaty. "Now see here, guard. That man is my son's father-in-law. If he is in there, we have a right to be in there too. We are family." Teo looked at me, awaiting instructions. He had the authority to throw them out of the resort entirely for this behavior. I could end their vacation right now. I could have them escorted off the property and banned for life. But that would be too easy. That would make them victims in their own minds. I needed them close, Tom. I needed them to see exactly what they were missing. I needed to dangle the carrot just out of reach until they were exhausted from jumping. I raised my hand, signaling Teo to stop. He paused, his grip still tight on Jason's collar. "It is all right, Teo." I called out, my voice calm and authoritative. "Let them in." Teo looked doubtful. "Sir, they are aggressive." "They are harmless," I said, standing up and tying my silk robe. "Just family. Confused, hot, and tired family. Let them through as my guests." Teo released Jason, who stumbled forward, straightening his shirt and trying to regain a shred of dignity that was already gone. He glared at the guard, then looked at me with a mixture of hatred and greed. I walked to the edge of the deck, looking down at them as the gate buzzed and clicked open. They walked in hesitantly, looking around at the pristine blue water, the private cabanas, and the silent, attentive staff. They looked like mud on a white carpet. "Come in," I said, gesturing to the empty chairs near the service station, far away from the prime spots. "Sit down. Have a glass of tap water. It is on me." Jason marched up to me, getting right in my face. The smell of his sweat was acrid. "Do not think this buys you anything, Bernie. I know what you did. We are going to have a long talk about my mother-in-law's estate. You are not going to hide that money from me anymore." I smiled, looking him dead in the eye. "Jason, the only thing I am hiding is my disappointment. Now sit down before I have Teo throw you back into the kiddie pool. Enjoy the shade. It is the only thing you are getting for free today." I turned my back on him and returned to my lobster, leaving them to simmer in their own envy. They were inside the gates, but they had never been further from where they wanted to be, and the show was just getting started. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in shades of bruised purple and charcoal, but inside the penthouse dining room, the atmosphere was far darker than the coming night. We were seated around a table made of reclaimed koa wood that was long enough to land a small plane on. I sat at the head while Jason, Emily, Linda, and Paul occupied the sides, looking like children who had raided a costume chest. They were drinking my wine, eating the filet mignon prepared by a private chef, and yet they could not stop looking for flaws. It was a defense mechanism, I realized. If they criticized it, they didn't have to admit they were impressed. If they mocked it, they didn't have to feel small. Linda was the ringleader of this particular circus. She ran a manicured fingernail along the rim of her crystal wine glass, tapping it aggressively. "You know, Bernie," she said, her voice dripping with that fake concern that always preceded an insult. "I have to say I am worried about you. This is all very flashy, very nouveau riche." She gestured vaguely at the room, at the hand-woven tapestries and the custom Italian lighting. "It screams overcompensation, don't you think, Paul?" Paul grunted, his mouth full of lobster mashed potatoes. He was already on his third glass of scotch, and his face was a map of broken capillaries and bad decisions. "It is irresponsible is what it is. Linda is right. You live in that tiny apartment for years, crying poor mouth, and then you blow your entire nest egg on what a week of luxury." He shook his head, sending a spray of crumbs onto the table. "It is sad, really. Trying to impress us at your age. You are going to go back home to cat food and darkness after this." I cut a piece of my steak, slowly savoring the silence before I spoke. "I am quite comfortable, Paul. I just wanted to treat my family." "Treat us," Jason scoffed. He was leaning back in his chair, picking his teeth with a silver toothpick he had found on the appetizer tray. "This is not a treat, Bernie. This is a cry for help. You are obviously going senile. You probably reverse mortgaged your apartment, didn't you? Or did you cash out Mom's life insurance policy, the one you swore didn't exist?" Emily finally spoke up. She had been quiet, pushing her food around her plate, but now she looked at me with eyes that were hard and calculating. "Dad, Jason is right. This is reckless. You are spending our inheritance on a hotel room." "Our inheritance?" I asked. "I thought the money was mine, Emily." "It is family money," she snapped. "And you are wasting it. You are being selfish. You know how much we are struggling. You know Jason's company is at a critical juncture. And instead of helping us, instead of securing your grandchildren's future, you are here playing billionaire for a few days. It is disgusting." The audacity was breathtaking. They were sitting in a room that cost $25,000 a night, eating food worth more than their car payments, and calling me selfish for paying for it. I took a sip of wine. It was a 1996 Bordeaux complex, and dry, much like my sense of humor at that moment. "So what do you suggest I do?" I asked, playing along. Jason sat up straight, sensing an opening. He put his elbows on the table, his eyes gleaming with predatory intent. "It is simple, Bernie. You need to liquidate. You obviously have access to some capital to afford this. Maybe you sold some old assets, maybe you found a stash of cash under the mattress. Whatever it is, you need to stop spending it on vanity projects." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded napkin on which he had scribbled some numbers. "I have a proposal. Blue Sky Venture Capital. My company needs a bridge round. We are expanding, Bernie. We are going global. If you give us the money you are wasting on this place and whatever else you have hidden, we can invest it. We can triple it in a year." Emily nodded vigorously. "It makes sense, Dad. Jason is a visionary. You could live in our guest room. We would take care of you. You wouldn't have to be alone in that apartment anymore. You could give us the money and we would manage it for you. It is for your own good. For my own good. The phrase hung in the air heavy with hypocrisy. They wanted me to sell my life so they could fund their delusions. They wanted to strip me of my dignity and shove me into a guest room dependent on their charity while they burned through my savings. And what if I say no, I asked. What if I prefer to enjoy my retirement? Then you are a fool, Linda interjected, pouring herself more wine with a heavy hand. A selfish old fool who doesn't care about his family. You are going to end up alone, Bernie. And when you run out of money, do not come crawling to Jason. He will be a tech mogul by then, and he won't have time for a broke old man. Jason laughed a cruel, sharp sound. Exactly. This is a one-time offer, Bernie. Buy into the future or rot in the past. This apartment, this vacation, it is all temporary. My company is forever. I looked at Jason, really looked at him. I saw the fear behind his arrogance. I saw the desperation. He needed money bad. His company was a sinking ship, and he was trying to drill a hole in my hull to keep himself afloat. He had no idea that I was the one who had built his ship, and I was the one who could sink it with a word. I will think about it. I lied. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the tension. We all turned. Paul had gotten up to find the restroom, his balance compromised by the scotch and the uneven rug. He had stumbled into a pedestal near the balcony door. On that pedestal had sat a celadon vase from the Ming dynasty, a piece I had acquired at auction in Hong Kong 10 years ago. It was delicate, rare, and utterly irreplaceable. Now it was a pile of jagged green shards on the marble floor. Paul stared at the mess, blinking sluggishly. Whoops, he slurred, swaying on his feet. Stupid place to put a flower pot. Linda gasped, but it was a performative gasp. Oh, Paul, be careful. You could have cut yourself. Jason glanced at the shards and shrugged. It is fine, Mom. It is just hotel decor. They have insurance for this kind of thing. He looked at me with a smirk. Add it to your bill, Bernie. Since you are so rich, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Emily didn't even get up to check the damage. She just sighed. Dad, you should have warned us things were fragile. This place is a death trap. I stood up slowly, walking over to the pile of ceramic. I knelt down, picking up a large shard. The glaze was cracked, the history erased in a second of drunken clumsiness. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, not hot and explosive, but icy and precise. That wasn't hotel decor, I said. My voice quiet but cutting through the room. What Jason asked bored. I stood up, turning to face them. The shard felt sharp in my hand. I said that wasn't hotel decor. That vase was part of my private collection. I brought it here because I like to be surrounded by my things. Paul laughed, a wet hacking sound. Your collection. Listen to him, Linda. He thinks he is a collector now. What did you pay for it, Bernie? $20 at a flea market. It is just a pot. I walked back to the table, placing the shard gently on the placemat in front of Jason. It was appraised at $15,000, I said. The room went dead silent. The number hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the space. Jason stared at the shard, his smirk faltering for the first time. 15,000, he repeated. For a pot, you are lying. I am not lying, I replied. And since you are so concerned with financial responsibility, Jason, and since this is my room under my name, that creates a liability. A liability that someone has to pay. Linda sputtered. You cannot expect Paul to pay for that. It was an accident. The rug was slippery. It is a safety hazard. We should sue you. Sue me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You want to sue me for breaking my property in my suite while drinking my scotch? Good luck with that, Linda. Jason stood up, his face reddening again. Stop trying to scare us, Bernie. You do not have a $15,000 vase. You are a retired nobody. This is just another one of your lies to make yourself feel important. You probably bought it at a gift shop downstairs." He picked up the shard and threw it back onto the floor, where it shattered into even smaller pieces. "There, now it is trash, just like your stories." I looked at the dust on the floor. That was the final straw. They had insulted me, they had demanded my money, and now they had destroyed my property with zero remorse. The time for games was over. "You are right, Jason," I said, walking toward the wall where the service panel was located. "I am just a nobody. I couldn't possibly own something like that." I pressed the button for the butler service. "But maybe we should ask the management to clear this up," I said. Jason crossed his arms. "Go ahead. Call them. Let them tell you it is a $50 replica. You are embarrassing yourself, old man." I waited. The door chime rang 30 seconds later. They had no idea that the person walking through that door wasn't just coming to sweep up the mess. She was coming to sweep away their entire reality. They thought they were dealing with a senile old man who made bad financial decisions. They were about to find out they were locked in a room with the landlord, the bank, and the executioner. And the bill was coming due. Jason stared at me with a look of pity that was far more insulting than his anger. He shook his head slowly, letting out a low whistle as he gestured to the shattered porcelain on the floor. "You really have lost it, haven't you, Bernie? Personal property. Private collection." He laughed, a harsh barking sound that grated against the silence of the room. "You are talking about a vase in a hotel room. A vase that looks like something my grandmother would have bought at a garage sale for $5. Do you actually believe the lies you are telling right now? Or is this just the dementia talking? Because if you think anyone here believes you own a $15,000 vase, you are even crazier than I thought." Linda chimed in, her voice shrill and nasty. "It is sad, really. He creates this fantasy world because he has nothing real to offer. Look at him standing there in a bathrobe trying to look dignified while he tries to scam his own family. You should be ashamed of yourself, Bernie. Trying to extort money from Jason just because Paul had a little accident. It is pathetic." Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with second-hand embarrassment. "Dad, please stop. Just sit down. We will call housekeeping to clean it up. Stop making a scene. You are embarrassing me." I didn't sit down. I didn't blink. I just stood there near the service panel, my finger still hovering near the button I had pressed moments ago. Jason walked over to the shards and kicked a piece of the Ming Dynasty ceramic with the toe of his sneaker, sending it skittering across the floor. "See? Just trash. Now call the manager, Bernie. Go ahead. I want to see the look on their face when you tell them this pot is yours. I want to see them laugh you out of this suite. Maybe they will finally kick you out, and we can enjoy the rest of our evening without your delusions." He was so confident, so sure of his place in the world, and my place beneath him. He honestly believed that the universe revolved around his mediocre success, and that I was just a satellite orbiting his gravity. He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall with a smug grin waiting for my humiliation to be complete. He checked his watch theatrically. "Well, where are they? Did you even press the button? Or did you just pretend to?" The doorbell rang. It wasn't the soft chime of room service. It was a sharp, authoritative buzz. Jason's grin widened. "Finally. Watch this, everyone. This is going to be good." He strode to the door and yanked it open, ready to berate a maid or a bellboy. Standing in the doorway was not a maid. It was Gabriella, the general manager of the Azure Pearl. She was a woman of imposing stature, dressed in an immaculate cream-colored suit. Her hair pulled back in a severe bun, and she was flanked by 2 large security officers in dark suits. Jason didn't lose his stride. "About time. Listen, we have a situation here. My father-in-law is confused. He is claiming ownership of hotel property that my father accidentally broke. The rug is a hazard, by the way. We are not paying for the damage, and I want you to explain to him that Gabriella didn't even look at him. She stepped past Jason as if he were a piece of furniture, her eyes locked onto me across the room. She walked with a purpose, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. The air in the room shifted instantly. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a sudden confusion. Why wasn't she listening to Jason? Why was she walking toward the old man in the robe? Gabriella stopped 3 feet in front of me. She clasped her hands in front of her and bowed her head slightly, a gesture of profound respect that you only see given to royalty or heads of state. "Good evening, Chairman Stone," she said, her voice clear and professional. "I received the alert from your personal panel. We have the helicopter on standby for your golf trip to Lanai tomorrow morning as requested. Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" The silence that followed was heavier than the vase had been. It was a physical weight pressing down on the room. Jason stood by the door, his mouth open mid-sentence. Emily dropped her fork. It clattered against her plate, a loud metallic ring that echoed in the dead quiet. Linda and Paul were frozen, their glasses of wine halfway to their mouths. Jason blinked rapidly, trying to process the words he had just heard. Chairman, Stone, helicopter. It didn't compute. His brain was trying to fit the Bernie he knew, the broke retiree, into the shape of the man standing before him, and the pieces were not fitting. "Excuse me," Jason stammered, stepping forward. "You must have him confused with someone else." "That is Bernie. He is my father-in-law. He is retired. He lives on a pension." Gabriella turned to him slowly. Her expression was one of icy tolerance. "I am not confused, sir. I have worked for Mr. Stone for 15 years. I know exactly who he is." She turned back to me, ignoring Jason completely. "Chairman, about the disturbance. Security is ready to remove the intruders if they are bothering you. We can have the local police waiting in the lobby." I looked at my family. They looked like statues carved from shock and fear. The arrogance was gone, wiped clean by a single sentence. I slowly untied the belt of my robe and let it hang loose, revealing the silk pajamas underneath that cost more than Jason's entire wardrobe. I straightened my back. The stoop of the tired old man vanished. The hesitation in my voice disappeared. I looked at them not as a father or a father-in-law, but as a man who commanded thousands of employees across 3 continents. "It is all right, Gabriella," I said, my voice deep and resonant. "They are just leaving. But add the cost of the Ming Vos to their incidental bill. The one registered to Jason Miller." Jason took a stumbling step forward. "Chairman." "What is going on, Bernie? What is she talking about? Why is she calling you that?" I walked over to the sideboard and poured myself a glass of water, my movements deliberate and precise. "Stone Horizon, Jason. Does the name ring a bell? You see it on the brochures in the lobby. You see it on the towels by the pool. You see it on the bottom of the invoices you cannot pay." Jason nodded dumbly. "Yeah. It is the parent company, the conglomerate that owns the resort." "So what?" "So what?" I repeated, swirling the water in the glass. "So I am Stone. Bernard Stone. I founded Stone Horizon 40 years ago. I built this resort from the ground up. I didn't book the presidential penthouse, Jason. I designed it." Emily let out a small strangled sound. "Dad." "No. That is impossible. You worked in... You said you were a consultant. You lived in that tiny apartment. We saw your car. It was a Honda." I turned to my daughter. I saw the fear in her eyes, the realization that she didn't know the man who raised her. "I was a consultant, Emily. I consulted for my own board of directors. And yes, I lived in that apartment. I drove that Honda. Do you know why?" She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "Because I wanted to see who you were," I said, my voice cold. "I stepped down as CEO 5 years ago. I handed the daily operations to a board so I could retire. I wanted to live a simple life. I wanted to see if my family loved me or for my net worth. I hid the money. I hid the power. And I waited. I looked at Linda and Paul, who were shrinking into their chairs, trying to become invisible. And I got my answer, didn't I? You treated Bernie the retiree like garbage. You mocked him. You excluded him. You made him watch your dog while you went on a vacation you couldn't afford. You only respect money, Jason. You only value power. Well, here it is. I spread my arms, gesturing to the room, to the view, to the waiting staff. This is who I am. I am the man who signs the checks. I am the man who owns the ground you are standing on. And you have failed the test in the most spectacular way possible. Jason's face was a mask of horror. He was doing the math in his head. The angel investment, the job, the apartment. He was realizing that every safety net he had, every dollar he thought he earned, had come from the man he had just called a loser. Bernie. Dad. Wait, Jason stuttered, his voice trembling. We didn't know. You have to understand. We were stressed. The business. Stop, I said, cutting him off with a sharp chop of my hand. Do not lie to me. Not anymore. I know about the business, Jason. I know everything. But we will get to that tomorrow. Right now, I want you out of my suite. I turned to Gabriella. Revoke their access to the VIP areas immediately. Downgrade their status to the lowest tier. No pool access. No room service. No amenities. If they want a bottle of water, they can buy it from the vending machine in the basement. And make sure the bill for that vase is on Jason's folio before he wakes up tomorrow. Gabriella nodded. With pleasure, Chairman. I looked at them one last time. Get out. And take your broken promises with you. Jason tried to argue, but the security guards stepped forward, their sheer size silencing him. He looked at me pleadingly, but I turned my back, walking out onto the balcony to watch the moon rise over my ocean. Behind me, I heard the shuffling of feet, the quiet sobs of my daughter, and the closing of the heavy door. They were gone. I was alone in my castle. But the silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was the silence of a judge who had just delivered a verdict. The first blow had landed. They knew who I was, but they still didn't know what I had done to their future. The vase was just a piece of pottery. Tomorrow I was going to break something much more valuable. I was going to break their lives. The morning sun over Hawaii is usually a symbol of hope and renewal, but for Jason Miller, it rose like a spotlight on a crime scene. I sat in the open-air lobby of the Azure Pearl, sipping a Kona coffee that cost more than Jason's first car, watching the inevitable meltdown unfold from behind the morning newspaper. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of desperation. Jason was pacing back and forth near the concierge desk, his floral shirt stained with sweat, his hair a disheveled mess from a sleepless night in the staff quarters of Block C. He looked like a man who had been running a marathon in a minefield. In his hand, he held a piece of heavy cream-colored cardstock. It was the invoice for the broken Ming vase. $15,000 due immediately upon checkout, or legal action would be taken. He was cornered. His personal cards were maxed out. His parents were sitting on a bench nearby, looking gray and defeated, whispering furiously to each other, probably calculating how much of their own retirement they would have to burn to get off this island. Emily was nowhere to be seen, likely hiding in their room, crying over the loss of a lifestyle she never actually earned. Jason tapped his phone screen violently, his thumb hitting the glass with the rhythm of a panic attack. I knew exactly who he was calling. He was calling the only lifeline he thought he had left. He was calling Blue Sky Venture Capital, the mysterious angel investor group that had funded his entire existence for the last 3 years. He was calling the people he thought believed in his genius. I watched him put the phone to his ear, his other hand covering his mouth to block out the ambient noise of the resort. I could see his lips moving fast, manic. Pick up, come on," he muttered loud enough for me to hear from 20 feet away. I need a bridge loan. Bridge. Just a small injection of liquidity. I just need to talk to the director. My phone began to ring. It was a sharp, professional trill that cut through the morning murmur of the lobby. I didn't pick it up immediately. I let it ring. 1 ring. 2 rings. I watched Jason's face crumble with each second of silence. He looked at his phone, then looked around the lobby, his eyes wild. On the 4th ring, I slowly reached into the pocket of my linen trousers and pulled out the encrypted black smartphone that was linked solely to the Blue Sky corporate line. I pressed the speakerphone button and set it on the marble coffee table in front of me. Blue Sky Ventures, Managing Director. Speaking, I said, my voice calm, deep, and devoid of any warmth. Jason stopped pacing. He froze, his phone still pressed to his ear. He heard my voice twice, once through the tiny speaker against his head, and once echoing through the lobby air right in front of him. He slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes locked onto the black phone on the table, then traveled up to my face. The color drained from his skin so fast, he looked like he might faint. Bernie, Jason whispered into his phone, his voice trembling. Why? Why are you answering the investor line? I took a sip of my coffee and leaned back in the wicker chair, crossing my legs. Because I am the investor, Jason. I am Blue Sky Ventures. I am the board. I am the bank. And unfortunately for you, the bank is now closed. Jason lowered his phone, his hand shaking so hard he almost dropped it. No. No, that is impossible. You are broke. You are a retiree. You watch my dog. Blue Sky is a conglomerate. I pitched to them. They loved my vision. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. They didn't love your vision, Jason. They loved my signature. I set up Blue Sky 5 years ago as a holding company for high-risk family assets. You were the high-risk asset. Every dollar you spent on that leased BMW, every cent that went into your downtown office space, every expense account. Dinner you wrote off it all came from my personal trust. I funded you because I wanted to see if you could build something if given the chance. I wanted to see if you were a man or just a leech. Jason stumbled toward me, his legs looking rubbery. But the funding. The Series B round. We were supposed to close next week. $200,000. I need that money, Bernie. The payroll is due. The vendors are waiting. I picked up the phone and spoke directly into the microphone, my eyes never leaving his. Regarding the Series B funding round for Miller Tech Solutions, I am invoking Clause 7B of our investment agreement, the Morality and Ethics Clause. Jason blinked, sweat dripping down his nose. What? What does that mean? It means, I continued, my voice sharpening like a blade, that funding is contingent on the CEO maintaining a standard of ethical behavior that reflects positively on the investor. It means that lying to the chairman of the parent company, destroying property at a Stone Horizon resort, and attempting to defraud a senior citizen, namely me, constitutes a gross violation of that contract. I tapped a few keys on the phone, executing a command I had queued up hours ago. As of this moment, I am freezing all corporate assets. The company credit cards are canceled effective immediately. The lease on your office space has been terminated. The company car has been reported for repossession, and the payroll account has been locked pending a forensic audit of your spending. Jason fell to his knees right there on the polished marble floor of the lobby. It wasn't a figure of speech. He physically collapsed, his legs giving out under the weight of his ruined life. People stopped to stare. A waiter paused with a tray of mimosas. The silence was absolute. You cannot do this, Jason gasped, tears welling in his eyes. That is my company. That is my name on the door. I built that. You built nothing. I snapped, standing up and looming over him. You spent my money to buy a costume of a businessman. You played CEO while I paid the bills, and you were so busy looking down on me, so busy calling me a loser and a burden, that you never stopped to ask where the money was actually coming from. You thought you were a shark, Jason, but you were just a goldfish swimming in a tank I paid for. And I just pulled the plug." Linda ran over, grabbing Jason by the shoulders. "Jason, what is he saying? What does he mean the money is gone? What about our return tickets? We are supposed to fly back business class on the company account." I looked at Linda, who was now looking at me with pure terror. "There is no company account, Linda. There is no business class. The card you use to upgrade those seats is a paperweight. If you want to get off this island, you better hope you have some cash stashed in those fake Louis Vuitton bags, because Stone Horizon is not paying for your exit." Jason looked up at me, his face a mask of utter defeat. "Dad, please. We are stranded here. We have that bill for the vase. We have no way home. You cannot leave us here. We are family." "Family," I repeated, tasting the word. "Family is the group of people you invite on vacation, Jason. Family is the people you treat with respect. You didn't invite me. You told me to watch the dog. You told me you needed a break from me. Well, congratulations. You have a permanent break." I signaled to the concierge. Kai approached, holding a silver platter with a single envelope on it. "This is for you, Jason," I said. Jason reached up with a trembling hand and took the envelope. He opened it, hoping against hope for a check, a reprieve, a mercy. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a cease and desist order. "You are no longer authorized to represent Blue Sky Ventures or Miller Tech Solutions," I said. "You are fired, Jason. From your own company, from my payroll, and from my life." I turned my back on him, adjusting my cuffs. "I have a tea time in 20 minutes. Security will see you out. Do not try to use the company card for breakfast. It will be declined." I walked away, leaving him kneeling on the cold floor, the sound of his mother's sobbing and his father's cursing echoing in the cavernous lobby. He was a man who had defined himself by his money, and in the span of a 3-minute phone call, I had stripped him naked. He wasn't a CEO anymore. He wasn't a VIP. He was just a broke man with a broken vase and a very long swim home. The financial blow had landed, and it was fatal. But the worst part for him wasn't the poverty. It was the knowledge that the man he had mocked was the god of his small universe, and he had just been cast out of heaven. The air conditioning in the cramped room of Block C had finally given up the ghost, rattling one last time before dying with a mechanical wheeze, leaving the air heavy with the smell of stale sweat and mounting panic. I was not in the room, of course, but my security team had access to the internal surveillance feeds of the resort, and I watched the feed on my tablet from the comfort of my air-conditioned limousine. It was like watching rats turn on each other in a sinking cage. The veneer of the happy family had completely dissolved. Linda was sitting on the edge of the sagging mattress, her face red and blotchy, screaming at her son. "You told us this was taken care of, Jason. You told us you were a millionaire. Now we are stuck on this rock with a bill we cannot pay, and it is all your fault." She threw a pillow at him, a pathetic gesture of impotent rage. Paul was pacing the small space, kicking the cheap furniture. "I should have known. You always were a failure, Jason. All talk and no action. We cashed out our IRA to pay for the tickets because you said you would reimburse us. That was our retirement money, you idiot. Now how are we going to get home? We are going to die here in this dump." Jason looked like a cornered animal. His floral shirt was unbuttoned, his hair wild, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape hatch that did not exist. "Shut up," he roared, his voice cracking. "Just shut up, both of you. This is not my fault. It is Bernie. That old psycho set me up. He tricked me. He let me believe he was poor. It is entrapment." He turned his wild eyes toward Emily, who was sitting in the corner crying silently, her mascara running down her face in dark streaks. "And you," he spat, pointing a trembling finger at her. "This is your fault, Emily. You lived with him for 20 years. How did you not know? How did you not know your father was a billionaire?" You are useless. You were supposed to know his secrets. Emily looked up, her lip quivering. I didn't know Jason. He never told me. I thought he was just a lonely old man. You were the one who said we should cut him off. You were the one who said he was a burden. Don't you dare blame this on me, Jason shouted, lunging toward her. You went along with it. You wanted the vacation just as much as I did. You are a terrible daughter and a terrible wife. If you had just been nicer to him, maybe he would not have done this. You should have massaged his ego more. You should have made him feel important. But no, you had to be a brat. He grabbed her arm, roughly pulling her up from the chair. You need to go fix this, Emily. Go find him, cry, beg, do whatever you have to do. Get him to pay the bill and get us tickets home. I do not care what it takes. Use that daddy's girl act you are so good at. Emily pulled away, her eyes widening in fear. He won't listen to me, Jason. He hates us. He hates you, Jason sneered, pushing her back against the wall. He hates you because you are weak. Now get out of here and do not come back without a check. The scene was pathetic and violent, a masterclass in cowardice. Jason, the big CEO, hiding behind his wife, forcing her to fight his battles. Linda and Paul just watched, not lifting a finger to help her, only caring about their own lost retirement money. Emily looked at them, at the people she had prioritized over me for years, and realized she was completely alone. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the room, the sound of the door slamming echoing through the cheap drywall. 10 minutes later, there was a frantic knocking at the door of my penthouse. I checked the monitor. It was Emily. She had fixed her hair as best she could and wiped away the smeared makeup, but she still looked desperate. I opened the door, but I did not invite her in. I stood in the threshold, a barrier she could not cross. Dad, she gasped, falling to her knees. Please, you have to help me. Jason is crazy, he is violent. I cannot go back there. I didn't know, Dad. I swear I didn't know he was stealing from you or that he was using your money. I was a victim too. He manipulated me. He made me cut you off. I love you, Dad. Please. I am your little girl. Her performance was impressive. The tears flowed freely, her voice trembled with just the right amount of fear. She reached out, trying to grab the hem of my trousers, looking up at me with those big eyes that used to work on me when she was 5 years old. But she was not 5 anymore. She was 30, and I had seen too much. I looked down at her, my face impassive. Stand up, Emily. You are ruining the carpet. She stood up, sniffing, wiping her nose. Dad, please. Just a ticket home. I will leave him. I promise. I will come live with you. I will take care of you. We can be a family again, just you and me. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It was time for the final revelation. The one that would strip away her victim status forever. You say you love me, Emily, I asked calmly. You say Jason forced you to treat me like garbage, that you wanted to be a family. Yes, Dad. Always. He made me say those things. I tapped the screen and opened an audio file. It was a recording from 6 months ago, captured by the security system I had installed in my apartment, the one they didn't know about. Listen to this, I said, pressing play. Emily's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the hallway. It was a conversation she had with her best friend on the phone while she was supposedly watering my plants. God, I hate going over there, Emily's recorded voice said. The place smells like old people. I wish he would just hurry up and die already. The apartment is in a good area. If he kicks the bucket, we could sell it and finally buy that boat Jason wants. He is just dead weight, Sarah. Useless dead weight. The recording ended. The silence in the hallway was absolute. Emily's face went pale white, the color draining away until she looked like a ghost. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The lie had been caught in her throat. That was not Jason speaking, Emily. I said, my voice cold and hard. That was you, in my house, wishing for my death so you could buy a boat. You didn't want a father. You wanted an inheritance. You didn't want to take care of me. You wanted to liquidate me. Dad, I didn't mean it. I was just venting, she stammered, backing away. No, I said, stepping forward, forcing her to retreat. You meant every word. You are not a victim, Emily. You are an accomplice. You are just as greedy as Jason, just less competent. You bet on the wrong horse and now you want to switch sides because you lost. But I am not a side. I am the consequence. I looked at her one last time, seeing not my daughter, but a stranger who shared my DNA. There is no room for you here. Not in this suite. Not in my house. And not in my will. You wanted me dead, well, to you I am. Consider this a ghost closing the door. I slammed the heavy oak door in her face. I heard her pounding on it, screaming my name, begging for a second chance, but I engaged the deadbolt and walked away. The sound of her crying faded as I walked deeper into the penthouse. It hurt, yes. It hurt like hell to cut off my own child. But a surgeon has to cut out the rot to save the patient. And I was finally saving myself. They were turning on each other down in the mud, and I was done getting dirty. The final act was approaching, and I had one last bill to present. The sun had not yet breached the horizon when Jason and his ragtag group tried to make their escape. It was the oldest trick in the book, the dine and dash, but performed on a 5-star scale. I was sitting in a high-backed velvet chair near the main entrance, obscured by a large potted palm, watching the security feed on a tablet, while keeping one eye on the lobby. They looked like thieves in a cartoon. Jason was sweating through his shirt, dragging 2 suitcases with a manic energy, while Emily trailed behind him, looking over her shoulder every 3 seconds. Linda and Paul were trying to walk casually, but the clatter of their rolling luggage on the marble floor echoed like gunshots in the quiet pre-dawn air. They were heading straight for the automatic glass doors, bypassing the reception desk entirely. They thought they could just walk away from the debt. They thought they could disappear into the island morning and figure out the rest later. They were 10 feet from the door when the exit mechanism locked with a heavy audible thud. Jason slammed into the glass, his momentum carrying him forward. He bounced off, looking around in confusion, pushing the button frantically. Nothing happened. The lobby, which had been empty a moment ago, suddenly filled with uniformed men. 4 resort security officers stepped out from the shadows, their arms crossed. 2 local police officers appeared from the manager's office, their hands resting on their belts. And finally, Henderson stepped into the center of the room, holding a thick legal binder like a weapon of war. Going somewhere, Mr. Miller Henderson asked, his voice cutting through the silence like a whip. Checkout is not until 11, and usually one settles the bill before leaving the premises. Jason spun around, his eyes wild. We are just going to the airport. We have an early flight. We were going to call and pay over the phone. Get these guards out of my way. This is false imprisonment. It is detention pending a criminal investigation. Henderson corrected him, walking closer. And you have no flight, Jason. Your tickets were canceled when the corporate card was flagged for fraud. You are not going anywhere except perhaps a holding cell. Linda shrieked, dropping her bag. A holding cell? Are you insane? We are respectable people. My son is a CEO. Tell them, Jason. Tell them who you are. I stood up, then stepping out from behind the palm tree. They know who he is, Linda, I said, walking to stand beside Henderson. They know exactly who he is. He is a thief who is trying to skip out on an $8,000 hotel tab. Jason looked at me, hatred burning in his eyes. You did this. You locked the doors. You want to humiliate us. Fine. Here. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his watch, a flashy gold timepiece he loved to show off. Take it. It is a Rolex. It is worth 10 grand. That covers the room and the food. Now let us leave. I didn't even look at the watch. It is a fake, Jason, I said calmly. Just like you. I bought it for you on Canal Street in New York 4 years ago for $50. You told everyone it was real, but we both know the truth. Put it away. We are not bartering. We are processing a crime scene. Henderson opened the binder and adjusted his glasses. He looked like a judge about to pass sentence. Mr. Jason Miller. Mrs. Emily Miller, Mr. and Mrs. Paul Miller Henderson began reading from the document. We have a list of outstanding liabilities that require immediate settlement. First, the invoice for your stay at the Azure Pearl. 3 nights in standard rooms plus excessive room service charges, unauthorized use of the premium minibar, and 4 spa treatments charged to a room that did not have credit authorization. The total comes to $8,422. Jason laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. Bill it to Blue Sky. It is a business expense. We were doing a corporate retreat. Henderson turned the page. Blue Sky Venture Capital has rejected the charges as fraudulent. Which brings us to item number 2, destruction of private property. The Ming Dynasty Celadon vase. Appraised value $15,000. That was an accident, Paul shouted, his face purple. I tripped. You cannot charge me for an accident. Negligence involving intoxication is not an accident, Sir Henderson replied coldly. It is liability. But these are minor matters compared to the 3rd item on the docket. Henderson pulled out a stack of spreadsheets, stapled together with a red cover sheet. Following the forensic audit ordered by Chairman Stone yesterday regarding the accounts of Miller Tech Solutions funded by Blue Sky Ventures, we have uncovered a systematic pattern of embezzlement and fraud. Jason went still. The hysterical energy evaporated, leaving him looking small and gray. What? What did you find? He whispered. Henderson read from the list, his voice monotonous and deadly. Unauthorized withdrawal of corporate funds for personal vehicle leases, $40,000. Payment of personal residential rent using Shell vendor invoices, $48,000. Purchase of luxury goods, specifically designer handbags and watches listed as office supplies, $22,000. And finally, the purchase of 5 international airline tickets using investor capital for non-business related travel, $12,000. Henderson looked up over his glasses. The total misappropriated funds amount to over $120,000, Jason. That is not poor bookkeeping. That is grand larceny. That is wire fraud. And since Blue Sky is a subsidiary of a holding company based in a different state, you have also committed federal crimes involving interstate commerce. Emily put her hand over her mouth, stifling a sob. Jason, you said the investors approved those expenses. You said it was part of your compensation package. He lied to you, Emily, I said, stepping closer. Just like he lied to me. Just like he lied to his parents. He has been stealing from me for 3 years. Every time he flashed a credit card, he was spending my money. Every time he bragged about his success, he was bragging about his ability to rob his own father-in-law. Jason looked at the police officers who were now moving toward him, taking handcuffs off their belts. Dad, wait. Bernie, please. We can work this out. I can work it off. I will work for the hotel. I will do anything. Do not let them arrest me. I cannot go to jail. I am not built for jail. I looked at him, at the man who had sneered at my clothes, who had tried to leave me behind, who had called me a burden. I felt no pity, only a deep, cold resolve. You are right, Jason, I said. You are not built for jail, but you certainly aren't built for business either. You had a chance. You had an angel investor who wanted you to succeed. You had a family who supported you, and you threw it all away for a vacation you couldn't afford. The police officer stepped forward, grabbing Jason's wrist and spinning him around. Jason Miller, you are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the loudest noise in the lobby. It was the sound of a heavy door slamming on a life of pretension. Jason began to cry, ugly sobbing gasps that shook his whole body. Linda screamed, grabbing at the officer's arm until he threatened to arrest her for obstruction. Paul just sat down on his suitcase and put his head in his hands. Emily stood frozen, watching her husband get dragged away. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Dad, do something." "I am doing something, Emily," I said. "I am teaching him the lesson he should have learned when he was a child. You do not take what is not yours, and you do not bite the hand that feeds you." Henderson handed the file to the second officer. "The evidence is all there, including the digital paper trail. We will be filing formal charges this morning." As they dragged Jason out through the sliding doors, which they had unlocked for his exit, the morning light hit his face. He looked back at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, no swagger, just the terrified look of a man who had finally met the consequences of his own actions. I turned to Henderson. "Good work. Now about the rest of them." Henderson nodded. "The eviction notice for their apartment back home has been served. The locks will be changed by noon today. Their personal assets have been frozen by the court to recoup the stolen funds. They are effectively homeless and penniless." I looked at Emily, Linda, and Paul, who were huddled together in the center of the lobby, looking like shipwreck survivors. "They wanted a break," I said. "They wanted to get away from it all. Well, they got their wish. They have nothing left to worry about. No job, no home, no money. Just a lot of free time to think about where they went wrong." I turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving them to explain to the hotel manager how they planned to pay the remaining $8,000. I had a golf game to get to, and for the first time in years, I was going to play with a clear head. The invoice had been delivered, and the price was everything they had. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruiser reflected off the polished marble floors of the azure pearl lobby, creating a disorienting strobe effect that matched the chaos unfolding in front of me. I watched through the glass sliding doors as Jason was shoved unceremoniously into the back seat of the vehicle, his head pushed down by the officer to clear the frame. He looked back one last time, his face pressed against the window, a mask of terrified realization. But I did not hold his gaze. He was already a memory, a bad investment written off and filed away. As the cruiser peeled away from the curb, disappearing down the palm-lined drive, silence rushed back into the lobby, filling the void left by the sirens. It was just me, Linda, and Paul now. The staff had retreated to a respectful distance, their eyes averted, pretending to polish brass railings or arrange flowers, but I knew they were listening to every breath. Linda stood amidst her pile of luggage, looking like a statue of ruin. Her expensive silk caftan was wrinkled and stained with tears, and her makeup had melted into dark streaks that aged her 10 years in 10 minutes. Paul was sitting on his suitcase, struggling to catch his breath, his face a dangerous shade of gray, clutching his chest, not from a medical emergency, but from the crushing weight of financial panic. For a moment, I thought they might ask about a lawyer for their son or how to contact the jail. I thought perhaps some shred of parental instinct might surface through their narcissism. But I was wrong. They were survivors of the most parasitic kind, and now that their host had been removed, they were desperately looking for a new one. Linda turned to me, her eyes wild and pleading. "Bernie," she rasped, her voice cracking. "What are we going to do? They took him. They took Jason. He broke the law." "Linda," I said simply. "Actions have consequences." She waved her hand, dismissing her son's incarceration as a minor inconvenience. "Forget about him. What about us? We are stranded here, Bernie. We have no tickets. Our cards are maxed out. We have no way to get to the airport, let alone buy a flight home. You have to help us." Paul stood up on shaky legs, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "She is right, Stone. You made your point. You taught the boy a lesson. Fine. We get it. You are rich. You are powerful. Congratulations. Now be a man and get us home. We are elderly people. You cannot just leave us on an island with nothing." The entitlement was breathtaking. Even in defeat, even while begging, they could not help but demand. They still believed they were owed something simply because they existed. They thought that my morality would override my memory of how they treated me. I looked at them, feeling absolutely nothing. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound indifference. "I am not leaving you with nothing." "Paul," I corrected him, my voice smooth and calm. "I am leaving you with exactly what you brought to this relationship. Yourself." Linda lunged forward, grabbing the lapel of my linen jacket. Her grip was desperate, her nails digging into the fabric. "Bernie, please. We are family. We are grandparents to your grandchildren. You cannot do this. It is cruel. Just buy us the tickets. Economy. We will fly economy. We do not care. Just get us off this rock." I gently but firmly removed her hand from my jacket, brushing the spot where she had touched me, as if removing a speck of dust. "You were not family when you laughed at my clothes, Linda," I said, looking down at her. "You were not family when you ate my food and called me a burden. You were not family when you encouraged your son to steal from me. You were predators, and now the prey has teeth." I turned away from them and signaled to the valet who was waiting by the entrance. He nodded and spoke into his radio. A moment later, a long, sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb, the engine purring like a large jungle cat. It was the hotel's house car reserved for the most exclusive guests. The driver stepped out, dressed in a white uniform, and opened the rear door, waiting for me to enter. Paul's eyes went wide when he saw the car. He looked at the luxurious leather interior, the chilled champagne waiting in the console, the sheer comfort that was just a few feet away. "Stone, wait," he begged, shuffling forward. "Just give us a ride to the airport. Please. We can figure it out from there. Just do not leave us here in the lobby like vagrants." I paused with one foot inside the car and turned back to face them one last time. They looked small. They looked pathetic. They were stripped of their pretenses, their arrogance, and their son's stolen money. They were just two mean-spirited people who had gambled on greed and lost everything. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my money clip. It was gold engraved with my initials, holding a thick stack of $100 bills. I saw Paul's eyes light up with a spark of hope. I saw Linda hold her breath, thinking that I was finally going to crack, that I was going to throw money at the problem, like I had done for years. I thumbed through the stack past the hundreds, past the 50s, until I found what I was looking for. A single crumpled $20 bill. I pulled it out and smoothed it against my palm. "Here," I said, flicking the bill toward them. It fluttered through the air, landing on the marble floor between Linda's expensive sandals. Linda looked at the money, then up at me, her mouth agape. $20. "What is this? This won't even buy us lunch at the airport." "It is not for lunch," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "It is for the bus. There is a public transit stop about a mile down the highway. It will take you to the commercial harbor." "The harbor?" Paul asked, confused. "Why would we go to the harbor?" "Because you cannot afford a plane ticket, Paul," I explained, as if talking to a slow child. "And since you do not know how to swim, I suggest you go down to the docks. Sometimes the cargo ships let people work for passage. You might have to scrub some decks or peel some potatoes, but it will get you back to the mainland eventually. Consider it a career opportunity. It is never too late to learn the value of hard work." I stepped into the cool, air-conditioned interior of the limousine and settled into the seat. The driver closed the door, shutting out the humid air and the sound of their sputtering protests. The tint on the windows was dark enough that I could see out, but they could not see in. I watched as Linda picked up the $20 bill, her hand shaking. She looked at the car, screaming something I couldn't hear, her face twisted in ugly rage. Paul just sat back down on his suitcase, defeated, looking at his shoes. As the car pulled away, gliding smoothly down the driveway, lined with tiki torches, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I felt lighter. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water and opened the folder Henderson had left for me on the seat. It contained the plans for my new charitable foundation, the one named after my late wife. The money that Jason and his family had tried to steal the fortune they thought they were entitled to was going to build schools and libraries. It was going to people who actually deserved a chance. I looked out the rear window as the azure pearl receded into the distance. Linda and Paul were just small specks now fading into the background of a paradise they had tried to poison. They were on their own. For the first time in their lives, they would have to survive without a host. And I suspected the world was going to be a very cold place for them. I turned back, facing forward toward the airport and my real life. The vacation was over. But for me, the freedom was just beginning. The sound of a golf ball being struck perfectly by a titanium driver is one of the most satisfying noises in the world. A sharp, clean crack that echoes across the fairway like a gunshot starting a race. I watched the white ball arc high against the deep blue sky of the Stone Creek Country Club, landing softly on the green of the 18th hole. A year ago, I would have been watching that ball alone, or worse, I would have been sitting in a cramped apartment, waiting for a phone call that never came. Today, I was surrounded by my foursome 3 retired school teachers who had no idea I was a billionaire, and who treated me with more respect over a $5 bet than my own family ever did over millions. The past 12 months have been a reconstruction period, not of my wealth, which was always secure, but of my peace. Henderson drove the golf cart up next to me, handing me a bottle of water. He does not just handle my legal battles anymore. He now serves as the director of the Catherine Stone Foundation. We spent the morning reviewing the architectural plans for a new pediatric wing at the city hospital. The irony is delicious. The money Jason tried to embezzle the fortune Emily felt entitled to just for breathing is now funding life-saving surgeries for children who will never know my name. $200,000, the exact amount Jason wanted for his bridge loan to save his vanity project, was donated last week to a scholarship fund for underprivileged entrepreneurs. Real entrepreneurs who build things with their hands, not their egos. I walked onto the green, my putter in hand, feeling the sun on my face. I am 70 now, but I feel 50. The stress of hiding the weight of carrying a secret life is gone. I live openly now. I split my time between the penthouse in Hawaii and a new estate I bought on the coast. I have staff who are paid well to care for me, but more importantly, I have friends who care for free. I tapped the ball into the hole, a gentle clink that signaled the end of the game. My friends cheered, slapping me on the back, telling me I still had the touch. We went to the clubhouse for lunch. I ordered a club sandwich and an iced tea. It was simple. It was honest. It was everything I wanted my life to be. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. The mask of Bernie the retiree was gone, and Bernard Stone the man was finally free to just be. But while the sun shines brightly on my life, I know that shadows have fallen long and hard elsewhere. I receive a report from Henderson once a month. It is a single sheet of paper, devoid of emotion, just the facts of the wreckage I left behind. Jason is currently residing in a minimum security federal facility in upstate New York. He is serving a 5-year sentence for wire fraud and grand larceny. Apparently, he is not doing well. The swagger, the arrogance, the floral shirts, none of that works when you are wearing a jumpsuit that matches everyone else's. He tries to call me sometimes. The prison operator's voice comes on the line asking if I will accept a collect call from an inmate. I always decline. I have nothing to say to him. He wanted to be a big shot. Now he is just a number. Emily's fate is perhaps even more tragic because she had every opportunity to escape it. She is currently living in a studio apartment in New Jersey, 3 hours away from the social circle she used to desperate to impress. The eviction from the luxury condo I owned was swift and the reputational damage from the scandal in Hawaii followed her home. Her influencer friends abandoned her the moment the money dried up. Henderson tells me she is working double shifts as a waitress at a roadside diner. I imagine her feet hurt. I imagine she hates the smell of grease that clings to her hair. I imagine she looks at the older customers, men my age, who come in for a cheap coffee, and she sees my face. I wonder if she remembers the day she told me I was a burden. Now she knows what a burden feels like. She is carrying the weight of her own choices, and there is no daddy to pick up the tab. As for Linda and Paul, they lost their house. They had leveraged it to the hilt to pay for their lifestyle, and when the legal fees from the Hawaii incident hit them, they folded. They are living in a rented trailer park in Florida now. Paul is working as a greeter at a discount superstore, standing on his feet for 8 hours a day, forcing smiles at strangers for minimum wage. Linda has been selling off her jewelry piece by piece, only to discover that most of it was costume jewelry, worthless trinkets she bought to look rich. They are exactly where they belong, surrounded by the mediocrity they tried so hard to rise above, not by working, but by climbing on my back. I finished my iced tea and looked out over the rolling greens of the golf course. I don't feel happy about their suffering. I don't feel sad either. I feel balance. The scales have been corrected. They wanted a vacation without me. They wanted a break from the old man. They told me to my face that I wasn't enough. So I gave them exactly what they asked for. I gave them a life without me. A life without my money, without my protection, without my love. I stood up, shaking hands with my friends, ready to head to the airport for a trip to Paris, a real trip this time, with people who actually wanted my company. My daughter said she needed space. Well, I gave her the whole world to be alone in. And that, as it turns out, was the most generous gift I could have ever given her. The lesson was expensive, but the freedom I bought with it was priceless. I learned that blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. For years, I thought buying their love would make it real. But all I did was rent their affection. The moment the money seemed to stop, the truth came out. You cannot build a home on a foundation of disrespect, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to let go of the people who weigh you down. My wealth didn't save me, my self-respect did. If you are holding on to people who only love you when you are useful, let them go. The peace you find on the other side is worth every penny. If you enjoyed watching Justice Be Served, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this, and let me know in the comments. Would you have given them a second chance?